Welcome into the newest episode of Commodore Clash, where Jonah Barbin and Zach Phillip talk Vanderbilt men's basketball, Vanderbilt women's basketball, the college football playoff selection controversy, and give you an NFL update. All next on Commodore Clash. Welcome into another episode of Commodore Clash. I'm Jonah Barbin. That's Zach Phillip, and we have a whole lot of Vanderbilt sports news to bring to you today. Where we're going to start today with men's basketball. The football season is over, at least for Vanderbilt, and we've got a lot to talk about with the college football playoff and the selection committee, but we will get to that later. Let's start with Vanderbilt men's basketball. So since the last time we talked, there's been two games. Boston College, blowout in favor of Boston College. And then Vanderbilt got back in the win column against Alabama A&M. So let's start with those two games. What did you see here from the Commodores?
So we got off to a tough start against Boston College. The way I wrote the preview article for that game, and we just were set up to lose that game. Quentin Post, super dominant, big 7-footer. He just went ballistic against us, shooting a ridiculous percentage from the three-point line for a 7-footer. Dominated inside. Our bigs really couldn't handle him down low. But Jonah, I was pretty encouraged by the second game against Alabama A&M. The offense was revived. Jason Rivera-Torres, we'll get to him later, had a fantastic game. And, getting all the guys back on the floor together, they started to show something. Still without Colin Smith. Hopefully he'll be able to come back in the next few games, and we can really get the chemistry developing among the five that we thought would carry us through the bulk of the season.
Yeah, I think that's the key there, Zach. You're talking about getting this chemistry together, and that was the first time against Alabama A&M that I think you see Tyron Lawrence on the floor, you see Ezra Manjon on the floor, and they're really looking like they're in lockstep together and can be that backcourt duo that we thought could make this team a legitimate contender in the SEC. So finally against Alabama A&M, for the first time, you get to see these guys working in harmony. Looked a little off kilter there in that Boston College game, and I agree. That was never a game that they were really in. So talk to me a little more about JRT. I understand you're very high on him right now.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he is the freshman I'm most excited about. Absolutely. He's really got a natural ability to score the ball. And that's something Vanderbilt has lacked so far this year, especially in the games that Lawrence and Manjon have missed. There really are two natural scorers. And I think JRT possesses that trait that not a lot of other guys, particularly freshmen, have on this team. And he's kind of in a mid-size range where he's really effective as a guard, but can also kind of size up against some bigger players, which is invaluable to Vanderbilt right now, given its lack of size. He got off to a slow start from the three-point line against Alabama A&M, but he can shoot, and I'm really looking forward to what he can give Vanderbilt in the rest of the season and going forward. Hopefully he's a player that's here multiple years and can make a big impact on the program.
Yeah, and I agree with the notion that it was encouraging to see what Vanderbilt did against Alabama A&M, but you have to remember that that's what they were supposed to do against an opponent like that, and earlier in the season with like losses to Presbyterian or close wins over teams in the 300s in the KenPom rankings. Finally, they did something that they were supposed to do. Never have lost to Alabama A&M at home. They're 7-0 against them at Memorial Gym. But still, it was a 4-point game at one point in the second half early. They had 10 turnovers, a lot of turnovers against a kind of, lowly opponent. And then you go down the stretch now, before you get to SEC basketball, which is always going to be competitive, which is always going to be a test, playing a pretty tough 5 games. You have one game in there that I think is very winnable, and we'll talk about those 4 coming up. But let's talk about the game tomorrow night at Memorial Gym, hosting San Francisco. And they're a tough team, Zach.
They're a really good team. I think they're 5-3 on the season so far, but they're inside the top 100 for sure. And KenPom, I think they've opened up as 1.5-point favorites against Vanderbilt.
Not enough.
We'll see where that line changes depending on availability of Colin Smith and other players. I look at this game as an opportunity, right? We've gotten off to a slow start on the season, but have shown promise against bad teams. This is where we can bring the team together against a formidable opponent, right? Against good opponents this year, they've eaten our lunch, and that's fine. But that's not going to work when we get into SEC play. We can still recover this season. We're not too far deep. We've just got to start winning these games against these good opponents and taking some of those 50-50 games for ourselves.
Talk about good opponents coming up. You got Texas Tech, Western Carolina, Memphis, and then Dartmouth. So Dartmouth really the winnable game in there for sure. They're in the 300th in the KenPom rankings. But those three, Zach, combined with the San Francisco game, I really wouldn't be surprised if they went 0-4. And I agree. You haven't had all your guys on the court. And before the season, I wouldn't have said they would go 0-4 in that stretch. So maybe I'm being a little unfair. Again, you start to see the contributions from JRT. You start to see Evan Taylor really settle in, right? You start to see these guys playing the roles that you thought maybe potentially they could play before the season. And then you get Tyron and Ezra working in harmony in that backcourt. Maybe they will win a couple of those games. They really need to when you think about saving the season and kind of the hole that they dug for themselves. If you're talking about a loss to Presbyterian, the way to balance that out is a win over a team like Texas Tech, right? And really show that that was an anomaly, not the norm. And then the thing that we've talked about a lot and continues to be a problem is, I think, the size. I'm still a little worried about the size on this team. Your tallest guy is Carter Lang, right? Only guy over 6'8". Meanwhile, you do kind of question the decisions of telling some freshmen not to come back. You send a guy like Malik Dia over to Belmont who's averaging 16 points a night, and he might be shooting a lot like we talked about before the show, but definitely a guy who seemed like he could develop into a talent like that. You look at that, Zach, in these games you have to win and struggling a little early on. I mean, do you feel like maybe some mistakes were made here?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly. We're really just too small, and we haven't even hit our stretch. Like we're coming down a stretch of playing SEC games where their bigs are 7 feet and 6'10" and really skillful. So I think that weakness is just going to continue to show itself. It's something hopefully we can find a way to overcome. And the flip side to that, the bright side, if you can find a bright side here, is that hopefully a guy like Van Allen Lubin, who's a better athlete than a lot of those guys that he's gonna face down low. Hopefully he can use that on the offensive end with his quickness, and he showed a good percentage from the 3-point line against Alabama and A&M. I don't quite remember how many he made, but what have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, well, he had a double-double in that game, and again, I think he just continues to improve. And like you were saying, if he can really get that shooting down from beyond the arc, I think this team can take leaps and bounds. And again, just more compliments to guys like Colin and Ezra that you expected to be leaders on this team this year, and obviously Tyron Lawrence. Let's go on to a merrier subject and talk about women's basketball. And oh man, what a start this team has had. And they have now, improved upon it since the last time we talked. They did sustain their first loss, 8-1, but their loss was pretty impressive. They lost to number 3 NC State. They hung around all game, Zach. Only lost that game 70-62, and then bounced back with a huge win over Louisiana Tech right after that.
Shea Ralph has them right where they need to be right now. You touched on it with the NC State loss. Look, that's one of the best teams in women's college basketball, and I watched that whole game. We hung in there till the very end. Actually got on a little bit of a run there at the end. Kind of scared NC State a little bit. But Sasha Washington just been going crazy. And Jordan Cambridge, I think, played 40 minutes in the most recent game. She's been playing fantastic. I'm really encouraged. And I think this is a team that's going to find a lot of SEC wins and could make a tournament run.
I couldn't agree more. I think this team, the sky is the limit for this team. They might even be a little early in my mind of Shea Ralph saying, we're going to get to this point where we're going to be contending every year. Well, they look pretty like legitimate contenders right now. If you're hanging around with NC State, if you're winning all these non-conference games, and again, to harp on your point, Sasha Washington, what kind of ball she's been playing all year. And this week has been huge for her, named TSWA Player of the Week. She dropped 33 in her last game against Louisiana Tech, 15 of 20 from the field. Also had a career high 8 steals. That's 6th in Vanderbilt women's basketball single game history. Her, Cambridge, and Ayanna Moore, right? Finally healthy. What a trio they make.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. I'm looking forward to see what they can do. My only bone to pick with the team right now is in those. I made a point last week about winning those close games and how that can make such a big impact on your record and really propel you ahead of where you may have been scheduled. They need to start blowing some of these teams out that were significantly better than. I think that's where you kind of start to show your might, right? You beat these teams that you should beat by about 20, you do. Instead of making it those last second games where we have been winning, but that's not necessarily a formula you can rely on late in the season.
I agree. The play up, play down to your opponents formula is never the best one. This 8-1 start is their best start since 2016. So, the accolades continue to come in of, they had the undefeated start, now they're 8-1. And again, it comes down to, you got a couple good transfers, right? Jordan Oliver out of Duke, and then you have the Tennessee transfer, Justine Pissot. So you have those two, and then you have 5 freshmen really anchoring and playing behind that big 3. So I think you have such a great amalgamation here of veteran talent who's played in Shea Ralph's system, veteran talent who have played in other 2 strong programs, right? And then these young guns coming out. And again, I think this is the kind of team that could make a deep run. Any more thoughts on?
No, that's all I've got. I look forward to seeing them this week. A couple big games down the stretch. Hopefully they can get it done.
So their upcoming schedule is the following: Butler, Lipscomb, Dayton, FDU, and Radford before they head into SEC play, where, anything can happen, extremely competitive, but we'll be excited to see how this team plays down the line. Okay, let's take the conversation to college football. Not so much Vanderbilt football, as they don't even really have a team right now. Everybody's transferred. So we'll get to that when we know more, and I'm sure you'll be covering that next semester. But let's talk about the college football playoffs. We have our Final Four. We've got Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Florida State undefeated and won the ACC. Left out. Your reaction?
I think the committee hit the nail right on that. I think they did a great job. I think they're really, every team is in the spot they should be. I was actually surprised to see Alabama behind Texas. I thought 3 and 4 would be flopped there, but just to address the big controversy of Florida State, I mean, you just can't convince me that Florida State's going to be able to hang with those teams given the quarterback situation with Hunter out. They're just not that good. I mean, on the defensive side, they are pretty solid, but we saw it against Louisville. They just couldn't get points up, and you take that into Michigan, I mean, they're going to just blow you out of the water. They wouldn't be able to hang with Michigan. And I think Alabama is going to give Michigan a fight. I'm really excited to see that game. So I think they did a good job.
Well, there's a reason why the Wolverines were upset when they saw that they were playing Alabama. Nobody wants to play Alabama right now. They're a one-loss team coming out of the SEC, a completely different team that lost to Texas. I mean, you were talking about they were struggling against like South Florida the week after that and benching Jalen Milroe. Everything is different now. He's practically launched himself into like the Heisman candidate talk for the rest of the season. What a win they had over Georgia. That's the best singular win of the whole season, if you ask me, being able to beat Georgia in the SEC championship, a team who had previously won 27 games in a row. So Alabama's resume was great. Here was what the committee got themselves in, because they had the nightmare scenario, right? Washington and Michigan went undefeated and both had extreme quality wins. They obviously were going to make it. So then you had these 3 teams, right? If Alabama made it, Texas had to make it, because Texas beat them head-to-head and only lost 1 game, although they lost to Oklahoma, right? So then what you could either do is you could put Texas at 3, and then at 4, it's either Alabama or Florida State. And you're right. Right now, the way this team is constructed without Jordan Travis, right, although they would have had their second-string quarterback back against Michigan, they're nowhere near as competitive as Alabama. And what the committee dictates is they want to take the 4 best teams. But it is a tough statement. So if you have a perfect regular season, I mean, Florida State couldn't have done anything more to get in. And they were able, even though the last 2 games without Jordan Travis wasn't pretty, they won them both, right? They won their championship conference game. So you look at it, and it's a tough statement about what the committee's about, what the playoffs are about. But again, I think this would be even more controversial if next year was the same playoff format. Now that we're moving to the 12-team format next year, nothing like this will happen. Teams will get snubbed, but it's not legitimate national championship contenders anymore in my mind.
Yeah, we had this conversation. Fortunately, it's going to be resolved after this year. You know, those top maybe 8 teams that could really contend are going to make it no matter what. And then you are absolutely going to have those snubs. Every year there's going to be a fan base left out, an offense, a defense left out that's been making their mark all season. But that's just the nature of sports and of football. And hopefully next year, those teams with that first round bye, those are going to be cemented, like no controversy there. We could find some controversy with who gets the bye and who doesn't.
Right.
But at least nobody's going to completely miss out on their chance to win the national championship. that really has the possibility of winning it.
All right, so here's what we've got. Let's do a little prediction time. We've got Alabama playing Michigan, and we've got Texas playing Washington. Who do you think wins those two games? And then we'll predict our national champion. So let's pick Washington, Texas first. Who you got?
I've got Texas. I really like Quinn Ewers and what Sarkisian's been able to do on that offense. It's really creative. They can put up points as well as anybody. I really like Texas. And Washington is also, and I don't want to discount what they did during the regular season, right? They just played a pretty good game against Oregon, but
they were 10-point underdogs,
right,
by the way.
Right, but I still think what Quinn Ewers is able to do, it's gonna put Washington away pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a close one in my mind. I hate to pick against Washington right now just because of the way they're playing football. And when people were doubting them, Oregon's going to blow them out, Bo Nix is going to put on a clink, I was saying, please, this team beat them head-to-head already. Washington has done everything they needed to do to prove it to me. I agree that Texas is the toughest matchup that they're faced with yet. But I'm going to go Washington. Give me Washington in this game. All right, so I have Washington, you have Texas, then Michigan and Bama. And this game is a juggernaut in my mind. It's probably the two best teams in the CFP.
Yeah, I would agree with you here. For sure, the two best teams. I've gone back and forth how I feel here. I think Milroe and Alabama are going to get it done. Milroe, what he's been able to do with his legs since the middle of the season has been so impressive. Defenses cannot contain him. I think it's too much for the Michigan defense to handle.
I agree. As good as Michigan has looked and as much reason they've given me not to doubt them, I mean, Ohio State played them really close. And if there was probably a little bit better play calling in that game, get Kyle McCord in a few better places, I really think Ohio State could have won that game and we could be talking about them playing Alabama. So give me Bama in this game. They've been, since week 3 or 4, I mean, just one of the premier teams in the nation. So I have Bama and Washington. You have Bama and Texas, your champion.
Give me Alabama. I think Milroe gets it done. I also think Milroe might win the Heisman. He's just been unreal since the middle part of the season. After he got benched, I mean, it lit a fire under him. He's just been phenomenal.
Yep. Something about benching Alabama quarterbacks. We've seen it with Jalen Hurts. I mean, Nick Saban has a way about him. He knows how to motivate guys, whether they're performing for Alabama or other schools or even in the NFL. I'm going to take Alabama as well to be your 2024, I suppose now, national champions. We have like about a month now to see before that unfolds. So get your bets straight, get all your predictions in, plenty of time. So we're going to wrap up quickly now, talking NFL as we always like to. And what we're going to do, now that we've seen huge game, Eagles, Niners blew them out at home, so maybe we're rethinking some of our big playoff predictions. But what we're going to do is we're going to draft a quarterback, skill position players, and a defense, right? Back and forth. I'll give you the first pick. Why not? And then I guess we'll snake it back of what we would want to build a championship roster for this playoffs. So you go. You could pick any position first, and then I can get 2, and then you'll go. All right?
All right, I'm going to take, with my first pick, I'll take the 49ers skill position players. Give me Ayuk, give me Debo, give me McCaffrey, give me Juszczyk, Kittle, everybody, and throw them with the quarterback I'm going to take next. We'll be smooth.
We'll be who?
We'll be smooth. Won't be able to.
I was gonna say. I thought you were taking a quarterback right now. I'm like, yo, wait, hold on. I think I get a pick here.
Can't be beat.
All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to go ahead and jump out and grab a defense. Give me the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're peaking at the right time. The clinic that they put on before the bye against the Chargers. Not that the Chargers look like world beaters, by the way, putting up 6 points against the New England Patriots, but the Ravens defense, Jason Garrett, compared, I would say, maybe 50 times compared them to the 2000 Ravens defense, which I'm not sure they're quite at that level, though they were world beaters in themselves, but that defense is going places, and so are the Baltimore Ravens. So give me their defense and give me, it's tough to, I was actually going to unabashedly say Mahomes, and he doesn't look like the man, but he doesn't have weapons. Give me Patrick Mahomes, he's the champion.
Those were the first 2 I was gonna take as well. Next, I will give me the Cowboys defense. High flying, lot of turnovers. That's the defense I want going into the playoffs.
Okay, so you have Cowboys defense. No, and then you get your last.
And my quarterback. I'll take Jalen Hurts. Would love to be able to have Jalen Hurts use his legs. I think that complementing the the Niners' weapons would be awesome.
Ooh, and then I'm going to finish. I'm going to take Miami's skill position players. I get myself Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. Man, I'm watching Hard Knocks right now. Have you seen any of it?
Yeah, I've
in
watched
season?
a little.
It's so fun to watch. Tyreek Hill, the way his relationship with head coach Mike McDaniel and everything they're doing down there in Miami, that guy can fly. He's going to break 2,000. He might be the MVP of this league if Dak Prescott doesn't continue his performance. That's what I think. Very, very exciting stuff. And just shout out, why not, to CJ Stroud. What kind of football is this rookie playing? He looks like he should have been the #1 overall pick. This has been Commodore Clash. That is Zach Phillip. I am Jonah Barber. Thank you so much for watching, folks. We've got a lot of exciting episodes coming up. Stay tuned next semester. Zach Phillip, Andrew Wilf, everybody here will hold it down for you. Until then, good night, folks. Enjoy.